choice.
Okay, everybody, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Can hear you.
Very good. So welcome to our second week of History 116. I'm seeing faces popping up. That's very good. So how has your week been so far, and how are your weekends?
My weekend was pretty good. How's yours?
It was good. Kind of busy, but I can't complain. Getting things set up here has been a lot of work, but mostly we've made good progress. So I think that it'll be better in the long run to have my office where it is here in France with my wife's parents able to help us with the kids. So I think it's going to be good. Um, so um, I asked you all to, okay, so your map quizzes, I received all of those, and I've graded a few, and then Devin's going to grade the rest of those. So those will be coming probably towards the end of the week. The grades will be appearing on Moodle. So if you look on Moodle, you may already be able to see grades sort of as they trickle in that column. A little more sound. I also wanted to mention, so every class period, every class session is going to be recorded on Zoom, and then the recording will go up as soon as I can get it up on Moodle with a link. It's actually a link that goes to a YouTube page. So the first two lectures are up, and you can go back and look at those if you want to go back over things that we covered, be in slow motion. And I'll be putting up the recorded lectures from previous classes I've taught as well, one that's on the syllabus. Today's was optional, and I realized that it was not visible, but it's visible now. So if you want to go back, look at that, you can do that. But usually you can look at the syllabus, and when I put up, when it says watch recorded lecture, it'll have a time frame to watch, not the whole lecture, and you can just kind of focus on that. So before I get going with class, I want to do attendance today, and we'll do like a roll call. Thank you, my assistant. So I'm going to go down the list. If you could just say here, and I will check you off on my list. Also, I can kind of see who's who that way. All right, Orlando.
Here.
All right. Is it Min Bakrak?
Yeah, Min Backrack. Yeah, I'm here.
Min, all right, thank you. Broderick.
Here.
All right. Ryan Benko.
Here.
Okay. Wells Harris Bureau.
Hi, here.
Thank you. Daniel.
Here.
Michael Castellanos. All right. How about Aaron Chang?
Here.
All right. Oh, okay. There's Aaron. Gotcha. Harrison. All right. How about Declan?
Yeah.
Thank you. Angela. All right, thank you. Jean.
Yeah.
Jean Dai.
You mean Jin Dai or?
Yeah, Jean Dai. That's right. Okay. Sharai De Leon.
Yes.
All right. Nam.
Yes.
Okay. Benjamin.
Here.
Okay. Caitlin.
Here.
Thank you. Carl.
Here.
All right. Michael Golden. Ellie.
Here.
Okay, just saw her actually. Great. Lacey. Ethan Hayes.
Here.
Okay, I just saw you. Kenneth.
Here.
All right. Yusuf Hoffman.
Here.
All right. Mai Hua.
Here.
Okay. Todd Jennings.
Here.
Thank you. Young Jin.
Here.
Ah, great. Michitsura Kramer.
Here.
Okay. Allison.
Here.
Okay. Samuel.
Here.
Carrie.
Here.
Okay. Jing Chen.
Yeah.
Okay. Eamon.
Here.
Okay. Ashley.
Here.
Daniel May.
Here.
Casper.
Here.
Okay. Connor McCabe. Okay, Jack McDonough.
Here.
Okay, Eric Melchione.
Here.
Okay, Matthew
Here.
Tara.
Here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yuri Nakano.
Here.
Okay. Jack McDonough. Oh, sorry. Actually, some of these are copied again. Let's see. Ferris.
Here.
All right. Tarun. No. Aaron Penn. All right. I see Tarun is here. Okay. Aaron Penn. Okay. Anderson.
I'm here, sir. Tarun's here. Actually, I had an internet outage.
Yes. That's okay. I see your name too there. Anderson Perry.
Yep. Here.
Okay. Thank you. Dennis.
Here.
Perrin. Okay. Artemis Roberts.
Yeah, here.
Okay, great. Khalil Ryan.
Here.
Okay. Naya Samuels. Not yet. Okay. Alan Stein.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hello.
Alexandra.
Here.
Okay. Alan Van Gorder.
Here.
All right. Shub. Ashish.
Yeah, here.
Okay. Michael Veranda.
Here.
Enisa. No. Vincent Vu.
I'm here.
All right,
Hello?
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Kiara?
Yeah, Kira. I'm here.
Kiara, okay. Jikun.
Here.
All right. And there's next is Remy.
Here.
Okay.
Oh.
And is it Gilles?
Here.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. That's how we're doing it for now. We might find a way to make it more efficient, but that's how we're doing it for today.
Oh, excuse me.
So, do you have any questions, guys,
Excuse me.
before we get started? Yes,
Oh.
Ellie.
I just wanted to let you know that I was briefly kicked out of the meeting, but I am here. In case you didn't.
Okay.
notice.
Thank you, Ellie. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm just having a look. You're welcome. Let's see. Chat. Okay. Lacey says she's here too. Okay. Got you. Excellent. All right. So I thought that today we could talk about a couple of sort of two different important things that are happening in history of Japan. Sort of have two focal points, and one is covered in the lecture that I just made visible for you. You can watch that if you want in your spare time, but it's also covered in the book. So we'll talk about some highlights from that part of the lecture, and we'll focus mostly today on the other part of lecture, which is a separate topic. So the first topic is about Japan's processes of unification, and we'll talk about that a little bit and sort of see if we have any things that were unclear about that, and I hit some highlights, and then we'll talk about the arrival and the encounter of Japan with the West. So that's where we're going to go. I'm going to do a PowerPoint share with you all so you can see my screen, and then that's the plan. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Can I get a yeah? Okay, I see a few yeses. Good. All right, thank you all. All right. So the big story in chapter 1 is Japan's unification. And there's some keywords I want to make sure that you remember from this part of the textbook because they'll be on the exam, but they're also important to understanding how Japan does begin to become a unified whole after centuries of disunity. The big story, of course, is a war. Does anyone, based on the readings, do you guys recall what the war was called? The name of the war that began in 1467 and begins Japan's warring states period. Any takers on that?
The Onin War.
All right, thank you, Alan. The Onin War, exactly. So this is a war that lasts for a decade, and it's really a war between some different parties who want to see different factions in the shogunate have more control. It's a question of which person will become the shogun next within the same family. So it's a civil war, and it's a very big dramatic war. And I don't want to stay on this too long, but this is the sort of the breaking point for the Ashikaga shogunate. From this point on, the shogunate was already sort of becoming weaker and weaker, loses all authority. And so the various daimyo in Japan are going to be fighting. Do you guys know what a daimyo is? Someone want to give me a quick, like, 2-sentence daimyo definition?
The feudal lords.
Okay, so they're feudal lords. Thank you, Ferris. And it's quite simple, right? But there are different, I guess, levels of feudal lords. But the major feudal lords are called daimyo, and they each have a domain called the Han, more or less like that. And the shogun is the strongest, wealthiest, most powerful daimyo in theory, and is holding control over the other daimyo, keeping them in check. When that authority is weakened, as it is up to and during the Onin War, then the daimyo begin to fight each other for supremacy, right? And that's what happens during the Warring States period. So let's sort of get through here. The Onin War lasts for 10 years. It destroys the capital. The daimyo are not following the hierarchy and they're fighting each other. Those who are weaker are fighting those who are stronger. Vassals of daimyo, who are themselves just smaller military figures, are trying to overtake their lords. This is a process called Gekokujo. This is, again, if you would like to go back and watch it more in the video that's up on Moodle now, you can do so. But it's topsy-turvy. And I also mentioned that there are also people who are looking for comfort amongst Buddhist monasteries and temples who have lots of land and are able to have their own armies to also secure things for them in the midst of all this fighting. So from this century of upheaval, we finally emerge with some strong power contenders who are trying to pull Japan together. The first is Oda Nobunaga, and the second is Toyotomi Hideyoshi. So these are the first unifiers of Japan, and there's lots about them in the textbook, and lots. I mentioned this, so those same points for the most part in the lecture that's online. But just to give you a brief overview, right? The first Nobunaga is able to pull together about a third of Japan under his direct control by fighting very, very intelligently, but also by making some intelligent alliances and decisions. He goes from being a very small daimyo in Owari, which is the little red dot here that you see, to controlling all of the pink and the red by his death, and 1582 by assassination by one of his top generals. He subdues the Buddhist military forces. He subdues the daimyo who challenge him, and he also is able to put in place a lot of good policies that sort of paved the way for Japan's unification. He is followed by his top general, Tokugawa Hideyoshi, who rose from being a peasant to become the most important general for Oda Nobunaga. His power continues to grow. He continues to add on to the holdings of Nobunaga. And he controls all of Japan by 1591. And he also invades Korea twice, in what many think was an effort to try and take over China. So he really had, I think, a lot of forward and strong momentum. He wanted to use that to make Japan into a great sort of global power. So again, this is all in the book, and it's also in the other lecture, but I wanted to hit it briefly again. If we look at what these two accomplished, looking at the map, they have accomplished a lot. We talked about all the ways in which Japan is sort of separated because of all the mountains and the distance and its topography. But Hideyoshi has, for the first time, fully brought these different pieces of Japan together into one loosely, but still clearly connected whole. Looking back at what they've accomplished, we can also see important legacies in the political spheres, in the economic spheres that lay the foundations for a more unified, stronger Japan. A few I could highlight here are that there is a land survey of who owns which land and since when. All samurai's swords are taken away. All the non-samurai Japanese commoners' swords are taken away so that they're not able to raise arms against the proper military ruling class, the samurai class. Daimyo are made expendable. They're made expendable. They can be moved at the whim of the shogun, or in this case, at the whim of Hideyoshi, who can use this as punishment for a disobedient daimyo. They can be put somewhere else and taken away from their usual hereditary lands. So we see a sort of a growing system taking place that will allow Japan to become indeed more modernized, more unified. I'm on short time here. And the third great unifier is Tokugawa Ieyasu, who kind of flies under the radar. And he does not openly oppose Nobunaga. He, as a child, in fact, is taken hostage by Nobunaga. And then when Nobunaga is killed, he buys his time and does not directly oppose Hideyoshi, and the two kind of strike a balance. Basically, they agree that Hideyoshi will let Tokugawa Ieyasu maintain significant authority, but he has to do it further away from the central part of Japan where he had power before. So he has to move up to area around today's Tokyo, and he could have territory there, and he could expand and build his army, but he could not be in his previous lands. And so he sort of is being kept at bay. And so by the time that Hideyoshi dies of old age, Tokugawa Ieyasu is one of the 5 most powerful daimyo in Japan. And Hideyoshi has a very good idea, or so it seems, of appointing the 5 most powerful daimyo beneath him, obviously, and who also all would like to have power as co-regents for his son, who hopefully will take over and hopefully go from being just top daimyo to becoming actual shogun. That's the hope. But as the book talks about, the story doesn't end there. None of these regents would like to see the other one take power, but they also don't want to give power to Hideyoshi's, at this point, infant son. So if we sort of skip forward a little bit, the climax of this entanglement is the Battle of Sekigahara, in which Tokugawa Ieyasu challenges the other 4 major daimyo on the field of battle. So this is a huge deal. If at any point it gets hard to hear me, please let me know. But anyway, so the Battle of Sekigahara is a major battle in 1600. Tens of thousands of troops from each of these very powerful daimyo, most of whom are actually very well known for their fighting and their skills on the field. They clash, and the outcome is that one of the four other powerful daimyo does not show up to fight against Tokugawa Ieyasu, and that an entire battalion under another one of the very important daimyo has agreed to change sides. So this sort of treachery, along with the sort of convenient absence, gives the edge to Tokugawa Ieyasu, who then becomes who is victorious very quickly, in fact. So the victory of Tokugawa Ieyasu on the field of Sekigahara is what leads to the beginning of a new era in Japan, of a unified Japan for the first time in over a century, but also in a longer time, the first time that we have a true central authority exercising power in Japan for centuries. It's been a mess, really, even when it wasn't quite as dramatic. It wasn't actually a situation of war. Tokugawa Ieyasu becomes the shogun officially in 1603, and the shogun is a title the emperor sort of bestows upon the military leader of the country, who then rules in the emperor's name. And the shogun's sons and grandsons will continue to be shogun for 2.5 centuries. And this is the era during which the Tokugawa shogunate rules Japan, and it's also known as the Edo period because Edo is the city that they rule from. So let's just talk briefly about this city of Edo. This is, again, also, we're still dealing with things that are partially in the video on the recorded lecture or also in the textbook, but the center of all this new strength is the capital Edo, which replaces Kyoto as the capital of Japan. And for all intents and purposes, this is the new shogunal capital of Japan. It progressed very quickly from a nothingness to an outpost castle, but it was a no man's land. And it was marshy, swampy, and far from everything important from Kyoto and Osaka, the sort of capital for money in Japan. It was far from that. But it does begin to change after Tokugawa Ieyasu takes possession in 1590. So I'm going to go a little faster here just to get through this last part here. But the making of Edo into a city and into a castle town is quite an amazing story. As you can see here, this village on a mosquito-ridden river, really transforms into a beautiful and impressive castle town very quickly over about a decade and a half. And also a very well protected, fortified castle town at that. It has castle moats, and the population of the city blossoms to 10 times its size within about a century. And with over 1 million people, Edo is the largest city in the world in 1720. So you can really see how it transforms in that sense. And I'll mention this lastly, that in the city, the very sort of dynamic social structures are already in place as well very early on. We have the upper city, which is where the daimyo and the samurai live. The daimyo, as we'll talk about in a little bit, have to live, part of their lives have to live in the capital. But the samurai who work for the shogunate or who work for the daimyo also often live in this part of the upper city or the Yamanote. We also have the Shitamachi, or the low city, which is where everyone else has to live, the merchants and the artisans and the those who are involved in entertainment. So if we look at the map of Edo, we see here is that there's a division here between the upper city, upper city up here where it's sort of, there's more greenery here in the middle of the Imperial Palace. And then down here by the water, closer to the bay, is the lower city, the Shitamachi, where everyone, where the houses are much smaller and closer together, and they're also made of much cheaper building materials, but where people go to have a good time as well. So merchants are a class that should be at the bottom in terms of Confucian ideology because they don't produce anything, but because Edo and as a whole, Japan in the early modern period is prospering, they actually do quite well and are moving up in all ways that matter and with their wealth. And they're even learning money to samurai, and they're even sort of able to dictate to get the best seats at the theater, at the Kabuki theater. The artisans also have their own sort of guild-specific neighborhoods. This is Kajicho in Tokyo, and this is. Can anyone see what's being sold here by these artisans? This picture. Anybody could see? Any ideas?
Some of it looks like pottery to me.
Are those scrubbers?
There probably is somewhere, but they're not making pottery here, Alexandra.
Are they
Other ideas?
Are they scrubbers and like kitchen related stuff?
Fish.
No, although that's actually the next neighborhood over, so it's very close by. Other guesses?
Umbrellas?
No. Can you see what this is right here in the bottom right of my screen?
Sandals?
Yeah. This is it's called Gitamachi, where they make sandals, make shoes. So this is a shoemakers artisans district, and these are all over the capital. And this really again helps to define the life of the Shitamachi, the low city. The highlight, perhaps, of course, is entertainment. Kabuki really only comes into its own during the early Edo period as an art form, as a form of entertainment. The theater is where you'd go to drink and talk gossip and see amazing, ostentatious costumes and stories about the present that are perhaps disguised to look like they're about the past. And also you would encounter women of the night, the geisha. This is actually an image of an oidan, which is a different, it's a super high level geisha who does not actually engage who sort of chooses her own customers. But in any case, as courtesans, these very sexualized, but typically not sexually active in that role, women typify very much the life of the low city or the Shitamachi in Japan. And as I mentioned in the other PowerPoint, and you see in the book as well, geisha are tied to tea houses. That is where they have contracts, and they are unable to get out of the contracts until they have served for a very long time. So it's quite a difficult situation, and we'll discuss that much more in the modern period, how this system continues. But anyway, the image of the geisha probably is for you is very iconic, right, for early modern Japan because of all the art that's focused on them as a class. So the Shitamachi also is the area that is the most vulnerable to disasters, be it flood or flooding, but usually it's fire or fire caused by earthquakes or fire caused by an accident. And this will actually be a continuity between the early modern and the modern period. The great Meireki fire in 1557 destroys the Shitamachi, almost right up to the Imperial Palace. And as you can sort of see here, the houses that are the most destroyed are those that are small and wooden and close together without enough air circulation. Okay, so now we're going to move away from previous lecture a bit and talk about an important change, and that important change is the tying together of Japan through networks of official roads, the Gokaido. So the most important road, of course, is the Tokaido, or the Eastern Sea route here, Kyoto to Edo. But the other roads are also important, and they really bring together Honshu in a way that hasn't been tied together before. And these are roads that the shogunate funded to improving or building some of them, but they're maintained by the shogunate, and they also have a system of of places to stop. So, a very famous series of, several actually famous series of these paintings that sort of depicts the stations of the Tokaido, where you would stop and you would be able to change your horses or to sleep for the night or get some food. And I'll just show you a few of these here. These are from Utagawa Hiroshige, who is a late Edo period, very well-known woodblock print artist. The route would actually begin here at Nihonbashi, and it would move, which is, I showed you before on the map of Tokyo, and it would move to Shinagawa, and then it would move to Totsuka, and then it would move to, there are several, this is Odawara, and then on to Kanbara, and arriving here at the Kamo River in Kyoto. There are 53 stops, but these are just a few. And people traveled them, new information traveled along these roads, but also the imagination of people in Japan also, I think, was captured by these images, which were on postcards and various kinds of cheaply available, material culture. So it really brought, Mount Fuji into the national imagination for the first time, and those kinds of things. As you leave Kyoto and Edo, you'd arrive more into the rest of Japan, which was not always doing as well as these major bustling castle towns. Famine was a big issue, especially as we got to the 1780s and 90s. There were recurrent famines every 20 years. And these did take their toll. We have stories of cannibalism and starvation, and it's very, very hard. Hard lives were led in those in sort of the back country parts of Japan, even as the rest of Japan prospered. For the most part, though, these famines do not bring the population of Japan down considerably, and it continues to grow. So what I want to talk about lastly, for the last 10 minutes of class, is if we think about why does the shogunates succeed at being in power for 2.5 centuries and being actually in power, not partial power or not having a regent who has authority in their name, but actually concrete authority, why this is possible. One of the most important sort of building blocks for their authority was what we call today the 6 settlements. And I've listed them here, and they're also in the book. But I'll just highlight a couple here, but they're all very important. Daimyo, as long as they follow the rules, can have considerable authority in their own domains. Daimyo cannot fix their castles or add on to their castles or get married without the shogun's permission. Local government really sort of directly speaks with the officials of the shogunate, bypassing daimyo and therefore bypassing sort of the potential for corruption. And we'll talk more about ideology next class, but the two most important, I think, for today are the Sankin Kotai, system of alternate attendance, and the various rules prohibiting ships or Christians or Westerners in particular to come to Japan outside of a little area called the Dejima, which is in the port of Nagasaki. So I want to talk about those two things before we end our class today. Sakin Kotai is a very important instrument for political control. The daimyo have to spend half a year every year in Edo. They have to go from wherever they are in Kagoshima in the far south, or Sendai in the further north. They have to come to live in the capital. They have to maintain a secondary house in the capital. And traveling also requires that they bring their entire retinue with them as well. This is sometimes as many as 2,000 men, right, traveling with them on these great government maintained roads to go live in the capital of Edo and then to go back to their home domains. But I'll also mention that the families, right, the wife or wives in most cases, and the children of daimyo had to live in Edo permanently. Just in case they got some, ideas about rebelling or trying to disobey the shogunate, there was collateral always in the capital to sort of make them think twice about those kinds of activities. So the Sankin Kotai as a system, as you can imagine, is quite effective. It drains the economy enormously, or the wealth of the daimyo, who spend all this money making these very big, impressive displays of wealth to travel to the capital and back. The second home also has to be impressive, and it has to, be up to their standards in the capital. And they also can't be back. They also sort of have weaker ties to their home domain, making it harder for them to sort of have the legitimacy and the power to rebel if they wanted to. So it's really a pretty impressive tool. And if you think about it for a sec, there probably are other pretty intelligent rulers, maybe in Europe, maybe in France, where a similar sort of effort to gather the nobility together to prevent them from uprising was instituted and also very successfully. Let's talk actually about Europe and talk about the last of these great settlements. This is, by the way, the entrance to the Imperial University, which today is University of Tokyo, and it actually before it was the first main gate to the Kaga domain, daimyo, the Maeda. So you can see it's quite nice, but they were even nicer before. But anyway, let's talk about the West for the last part of class today, and how we get to having the lack of foreigners be one of the 6 settlements. The Portuguese have tried to get to Southeast Asia and East Asia for 20 or so years before they finally shipwrecked in 1543 on the island of Tanegashima, which is down here off the coast of Kyushu. And right away, they're going to be looking for opportunities. This was actually a very purposeful shipwreck. They were trying to engage with trade with Japan and through Japan with China. This is a Zen monk's recollection of what happened on the island of Tanegashima when the Portuguese arrived. Does anyone want to guess what this, what was being described in this little recollection here? Gunpowder. Yeah, guns, right? The guns are not new to Japan. There have been guns from China for a little while, but not guns like these, not as accurate, not as light and carryable. This is ttepoki, but there are several others like they talk about this. So the Portuguese arrived with some spices and guns, and these will greatly change the way that war is fought in Japan. It contributes to how Oda Nobunaga is able to use foot soldiers to achieve his early unification in Japan, and lots of things like that. So the Portuguese will quickly become an important part of Japanese trade. Essentially, they will move up, first up here to Hirado and then down here to Nagasaki, but they will be taking Japanese silver to China and bringing back Chinese silk to Japan. They could do that because at this point in time, the Japanese and the Chinese have a bit of a trade. They've stopped trading. There's been a trade dispute, and China has revoked Japan's right to trade with China. So the Portuguese step in and keep the trade flowing and make themselves a good profit along the way. And this is how we introduce Westerners, but also how we introduce Christianity into Japan. Missionaries come along in 1549, and they begin themselves to also make their way throughout Japan and to preach Christianity for the first time. This is obviously Catholicism, and making converts. And to sort of keep it short and brief, the first missionary is Francis Xavier. So if you see Xavier, University Xavier, what that name when you see it, this is the same person. He only spends 2 years or so in Japan, but his seed sort of that launches the mission in Japan will allow other Jesuits to come after him, and that they will be able to then convert many people. So we're talking about an importance here in that this is the first time that Japan is able to, the Portuguese are able to get some cultural knowledge of Japan. When the merchants who arrive don't speak Japanese, they don't need to speak Japanese, there's no interest in that kind of interaction. But the Jesuits, who are well-educated and well-prepared and also very curious, do want to do that. They want to understand language and the culture, and this creates, what now is 5 centuries of Japanese Western cultural exchange. And in a nutshell, from daimyo to everyday commoners, there were 300,000 converts who convert to Christianity during the half century of Christianity's thriving in the last part of the Warring States period in Japan, and the missionaries act as translators for the merchants, and they sort of go between the merchants and the Japanese to help them figure out things. They teach European science as well, mathematics, and they also discuss religion, but also science and philosophy with Buddhist priests, and they even meet Nobunaga and Hideyoshi. So the last part of the story is, however, that they begin to reveal through all this exchange the kind of colonization that Europe is undertaking, and the dangers that Europe might pose for Japan. And the missionaries are part of that kind of danger, in fact. And so the last part of that story is that Christianity is forbidden by Hideyoshi in a fit of rage in 1587, and then it is again and more strongly forbidden in 1612 by Tokugawa Ieyasu. And then all the foreign Jesuits, priests who are there, are exiled. And then there is a persecution, it's quite terrible, in fact, to rid the country of this religion. And the reason given for this is that Christianity is a dangerous religion that's going to weaken Japan. What I really see, though, is that it's an effort to eliminate all possible ideologies that might contradict the government's main ideological foci. This is an image here of Christ, as you can see, and to prove you are not a Christian, you had to stomp on it, and if you shed a tear, then you were clearly not. You were clearly a Christian, and you could be persecuted. You had to recant and apostatize. and even the resistance that comes along with this included a rebellion of Christians who, in fact, refused to recant, and they stayed in a castle, and it was a siege, Ishmabara, which took thousands of lives before it was eventually put down. It's the only, but also the last formal rebellion against the shogunate. So, in that sense, the government really had done, I think, a pretty good job of identifying a possible threat and putting it down. So we're out of time. So I'm going to stop there for today. Thank you all for coming to class. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. All
I
right.
have a question.
So thank you all. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
I have a question.
Yes, Ashley.
I have two. One, where can we find the primary source assignment? I couldn't find that on Moodle. Same.
Yeah, so it'll be up. It'll be up. I'll probably put it up like tomorrow. Maybe I can put it up tonight. We'll have to see about my schedule, but it'll be up. I think that I'm gonna have you guys do. This is like for Friday, right? Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, I'll put that up for you guys tomorrow.
And I
Have
the slide
then.
you're showing in this. Is that going to be on Moodle too at all?
Yeah, the PowerPoint will be on Moodle. The one from last class is up, and it'll be up. There's a PowerPoints folder. Just click on it, and you'll find all the PowerPoints there. Actually.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions as you guys head out? Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.